Kottayam Medical College, and examiners are Habibullah sir. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Habibullah because I had the opportunity to go with him as co-examiner in some of the PG teaching programs, and he's a very good PG teacher. He's the former professor and head of the Department of OBGYN, JIPMER, Pondicherry, ex-president of Pondicherry OBG Society, vice president of AGOA. His fields of interest are gynec-oncology, fetal medicine, lot of publications, over 80 publications. He's resource person for PG training programs in several places, especially in Kerala. He used to come to Calicut, Trichy, and he's a peer reviewer for various journals, contributed various chapters. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. Next examiner is Mini CH Madam. She's a good PG teacher. She's professor and head of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Government Medical College, Kozhikode. Inviting Madam also.
Thank you, Ajay.
For the students,
PG students, can you introduce yourselves?
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Della Sebastian, Junior Resident Obstetrics and Gynecology, Government Medical College, Kottayam. I am Dr. Anisha Shaji, Junior Resident Obstetrics and Gynecology, Kottayam Medical College.
Okay, thank you.
good evening, everybody. So, unlike the previous presentations, this will be a straightforward clinical case discussion. Please remember that. Please remember that your examiners are not gynae-oncologists. Usually general gynecologists there. Some of them may have interest in gynae-oncology. So all these advanced discussions which took place may not come to your discussion at all. Unless you're too good and you answered everything, then they may ask you immunotherapy and all that. Otherwise, most of the discussions end in the clinical discussion and management. Please remember that. So those are the must-know things which you should answer before you go to the nice-to-know things. Okay. And don't be very theoretical unless where it is necessary. Don't keep on quoting American college and American guidelines. And
Madam.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Don't keep on quoting the guidelines, Asking this patient what will you do?
Phone madam type it.
Okay, so you have to answer in your case, in your circumstance, with your resources, what will you do? That should be more practical. They want to test whether you really worked in the ward. Tomorrow, if a patient comes, you'll be able to look after her. Will you be able to obtain history, examine, and order proper investigations? These are the things we are going to. Good evening, madam. Dr. Mini, madam.
Good evening, sir. Shall we start? At the outset, let me thank the organizers, the FOXI Oncology Committee and KFOG and the POX Society for giving me this opportunity. Okay, shall we start? Please start sharing your slides.
Can you make it slideshow?
Are you able to see the slideshow?
Okay.
Okay, now it is okay.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm going to present the case of Ms. X, a 60-year-old lady coming from Kanjanappally, who's a housewife of socioeconomic status, middle class. came with presenting complaints of postmenopausal bleeding for 5 days. History of presenting complaints. She came to us 2 weeks back with history of 5 days of bleeding of 5 days duration. She had heavy bleeding, no history of vaginal discharge, no history of abdominal pain or any other complaints, no history of loss of weight or loss of appetite, no history of altered bowel and bladder habits. Menstrual history, she attained menarche at 13 years of age. Cycles were regular, 28 to 30 day cycles, bleeding lasting for 4 days. No history of heavy menstrual bleeding in the past. Menopause attained at 45 years. She was married at 20 years. She had 3 full-term normal vaginal deliveries, postpartum sterilization done, no history of any contraceptive usage. Her last childbirth was 28 years ago. Her husband died 10 years back. Past history, the patient is hypertensive for the past 13 years on regular medication. She's a case of type 2 diabetes mellitus for the past 8 years. She's on tablet metformin 500 mg BD. She had no history of tuberculosis or any other systemic illness in the past. Family history, no history of any breast, colon, or ovarian cancer or any other no other malignancies in the family. No history of bleeding disorder, no history of diabetes or hypertension in the family. Personal history, her sleep and appetite is normal, bowel and bladder habits normal, no history of smoking or alcohol or any other addictions. She follows mixed diet. On examination, she's well built and nourished. She has height of 160 centimeter, weight 80 kg, BMI 32 kilogram per meter square, pulse rate 78 per minute, regular rhythm, normal rate in character and volume. Blood pressure 120/80 millimeter mercury, measured on the right arm in sitting position. Respiratory rate 18 per minute. On examination, there is no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, edema, or lymphadenopathy. There is no palpable supraclavicular or inguinal lymph nodes. Her breast and thyroid normal, spine and gait normal, cardiovascular system S1 and S2 heart, no murmur. Respiratory system, chest is clear, bilateral air entry equal. Central nervous system, no focal neurological deficit. On abdominal examination, on inspection, abdomen is obese, umbilicus inverted, all quadrants moves equally with respiration, no dilated veins or visible pulsations, no visible mass, hernial orifices appears normal, postpartum sterilization scars seen. Palpation, abdomen soft, no local rise of temperature and tenderness, no palpable mass, no hepatosplenomegaly. On percussion, resonant node heard all over the all 4 quadrants, no shifting dullness or fluid thrill. On auscultation, normal vowel sounds heard. On local examination, sparse pubic hair present, labia majora and labia minora normal, no focal lesion seen. On post speculum examination, the vaginal mucosa appears normal, cervix healthy, no focal lesion seen. On bimanual pelvic examination, the cervix feels normal, uterus normal size, non-tender, mobile, no mass or tenderness in the fornices. On rectal examination, the findings of bimanual pelvic examination confirmed, rectal mucosa free, no palpable masses present. On summarizing the case, a 60-year-old para 3 live 3 postmenopausal woman who's a case of type 2 diabetes mellitus and systemic hypertension presented with postmenopausal bleeding. On examination, she was obese, no mass felt per abdomen. On per speculum examination, no focal lesion seen, and on bimanual pelvic examination, uterus was normal size, no adnexal lesions felt, other systems were within normal limits. The diagnosis is it's a case of postmenopausal bleeding for evaluation.
Okay. So I expected you to summarize the case. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. In the previous slide, you have the summary, no? So,
Yes.
In between, I stopped you.
in the previous slide,
But I was not audible to you.
Yes, it's audible, sir.
Now I
So
am
the
not. Okay. Okay, what is your clinical diagnosis? What are the possibilities you think in this patient?
take the previous slide. You take the previous slide. Your summary and see the positive points. Can't you hear me?
Yes, madam. It's not moving.
Okay, you tell her. You must be remembering, no? What are the points which will help you? Which will help you to reach a diagnosis?
lady with complaints of postmenopausal bleeding. She's a postmenopausal lady, came with complaints of postmenopausal bleeding. She's obese, she has history of hypertension and diabetes. All these factors are pointing to a diagnosis of CA endometrium for this patient. On examination, she was obese. On per abdomen observation, there was no masses felt. Per specular examination, no focal lesions seen. And in per vaginal examination, uterus was normal size. And other systems were within normal limits.
May I interrupt? Can you just put on your connect to your charger? Your battery is running low. Yes, please.
I thought it
continue.
was mine. I thought it was mine. Okay. So these are the positive points. Your age of the patient, isn't it? Age of
Yes.
the patient. Then she's diabetic.
Yes, hypertensive.
She's hypertensive. She's obese.
Obese.
She has come with the symptom of postmenopausal bleeding. So that's what sir was asking you. What is your clinical? Are you happy with this patient? Are you feeling sorry for this patient?
We feel
Okay.
worried.
So how will you evaluate? To take it as a very important case, isn't it?
Yes.
She has got a heavy menstrual bleeding for 5 days.
What is postmenopausal bleeding? So all these were discussed in previous few lectures. For recap, for clinical discussion, I am asking you again, what is postmenopausal bleeding?
Postmenopausal bleeding is the it's occurrence of any bleeding from the genital tract after the cessation of the menopause, after 1 year of cessation of menopause, or any bleeding if occurs after 6 months of bleeding, it warrants evaluation. 6 months of menopause, it warrants.
30-year-old comes with absent periods for 1 year.
Yes, sir.
Then she bleeds. You call it postmenopausal?
After 40 years, with 1 year of no menstrual bleeding, we call it menopause.
No, you're sure at 40 years, everybody has to attain menopause.
No, sir.
So that comes the question, what is the age of menopause?
Normal mean age of menopause in India is about 45, 47 years in India.
Okay.
Nowadays, people go for pregnancy at 40 years, isn't it? So during the pregnancy 10 months and lactating afterwards, they'll have full amenorrhea. Then they will resume periods, you call it postmenopausal bleeding because they are all 40 years. Due to loss of ovarian follicular activity. Okay, that menopause has to be defined as loss of ovarian follicular activity. Okay. Okay, go ahead. So how common is endometrial cancer? Because today's whole discussion, because the topic is endometrial cancer, nobody has even uttered the word cancer cervix. Because in Kerala, cancer cervix may not be common, but rest of India.
Yesterday it was cancer cervix, sir.
Yes,
Yesterday's session was full of cancer cervix.
is there?
So
Okay.
that yesterday there was a separate session.
No, that's okay.
That is why maybe because today's session is
In the exam sessions are not separate.
yeah.
So you should
Because
keep,
we can't be jumping into the conclusion that this is carcinoma endometrium, isn't it? That's what.
no, that's okay. Because you have done a speculum examination, you have seen a healthy cervix, you have said it is likely to be carcinoma endometrium. It can still be endocervical cancer, though it's not very common. So out of cancer cervix, 80% occur on the ectocervix, 20% in the endocervix. So still, that's why we used to do fractional curettage, to rule out endocervical cancer. Okay. It can still be picked up if a proper cytobrush is used, isn't it? Okay. So don't forget to tell cervix, because everybody is mentioning only endometrium. That is, those Western books, if you read, they'll write only endometrium. Okay, they don't write even cervix. So cervix and endometrium are equally common in India, at least equally in postmenopausal women, 10% each. So 20 to 25% of causes of postmenopausal bleeding is malignancy. So our concern should be to rule out malignancy first whenever a postmenopausal bleeding comes. So why do you say, somebody told already in the previous slides, atrophic endometrium vaginitis is the most common cause in up to 60% of cases. So why not this one is, this is atrophic vaginitis?
She had risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, and she's an.
This is different. All diabetic hypertension should have in malignancy. There is nothing like that. A diabetic patient and hypertensive patient can also have atrophic vaginitis, no?
Yes,
So
sir.
why,
She can.
why are you saying it is not atrophic vaginitis in your case?
No other features of any postmenopausal symptoms is described by the patient.
Vagina and
Hypoestrogenic symptoms are not present in the patient.
and when you examine speculum examination, there may be thin spots. You can say like strawberry vagina. All these things may be there, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Evidence of atrophic vagina will be there, and bleeding, if at all, will be very scanty and blood-stained discharge. Of course, she is a widow, but otherwise there may be some post-coital difficulty during coitus and coital mild bleeding may be there, blood-stained discharge. Okay, it won't be frank bleeding like this. Okay, you said profuse bleeding, isn't it? So it won't be like this. Okay. So in cancer cervix, when there is a growth, there can be profuse bleeding. In cancer endometrium also, there can be bleeding, may not be profuse, but in this case, it is there. That means there is a big growth in the uterine cavity. Okay. To add to that, she is overweight, you said, or obese, whatever, BMI, I don't remember how much it is. And she has known hypertensive and diabetic for many years. That is what we call it, corpus cancer syndrome. Okay. So there is no family history. She doesn't belong to the Lynch family, but still, she is a high-risk patient for endometrial cancer, isn't it? What is the lifetime risk in general population of endometrial cancer?
2 to 3%.
About 3%. In Lynch syndrome, how much it is?
60%.
60%. So you can imagine how much more common in Lynch. So Lynch women have to be followed and what has to be done, all that. Dr. Lata has already told that. Okay. Another thing is in Lynch syndrome, endometrial cancer is what you call sentinel cancer. Already Dr. Lata told that. Okay. That means that is the first cancer to be followed by probably a colonic cancer, colorectal cancer and other things. Okay. Yes, go ahead. What other things? In a 60-year-old with menopause about 15 years ago, the uterus should be atrophic, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Here you said uterus is normal size. That means it is larger for that age. That also is a sign of some pathology inside.
Cervix is also normal, she said. No, cervix is not atrophic.
Atrophic. It's not atrophic. So these indicate probably there is some pathology there, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Of course, in endocervical cancer, the cervix can be barrel-shaped, ballooned, barrel-shaped it can be. And it may feel hard when you do PV through fornix. If you try to feel the isthmus through the fornix, it may feel hard, okay, and nodular, bulky, okay. And in all malignancies, you must do a rectal examination. In all gynae cases, more so in malignancy, pelvirectal examination, PVR or rectal examination you must do, okay. I have not seen cases of endometrial cancer with rectal involvement, but it is a policy that you must do a rectal examination, PVR, combined pelvirectal examination, in case there is a mass. In cancer cervix, anyway, definitely you have to, your staging is by rectal examination only. This parametrial involvement you should not describe in bimanual examination, okay, only rectal examination, okay. In ovarian malignancy, again, rectal examination, you will be able to better see the nodules in Douglas and uterosacral nodules. Similarly, in endometriosis also, you'll be able to better feel the uterosacral nodules. So in all gynae cases, especially in malignancy, you must do a rectal examination. Okay, that's very important. You may say same findings, that's okay. No different finding, but still you must completion say. Otherwise, they'll ask you. Okay. Any other points in your diagnosis?
There is no signs. There's no signs of infection also, isn't it? She doesn't give any history of fever or any discharge. Doesn't, no?
No history.
Okay. So how are you going to proceed?
We had this patient was admitted here, and she came with postmenopausal bleeding. We had done a transvaginal sonography, and to rule out to assess the endometriosis.
Was she anemic and all? Isn't it?
No,
Was she anemic? So general investigations have to be done first, no? Okay.
General investigation as well as specific investigation has to be done. General investigation, complete blood count, blood grouping, renal function.
Have you written that? Have you written that in the slide?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Then can you show that?
Yeah.
Can't see. Okay, then read. Can't see.
General evaluation also is very important. And next we proceed to the diagnosis. How will you diagnose? You are suspecting cancer.
We have to do a transvaginal ultrasound. And
Transabdominal, no? First we should go for an abdominal ultrasound, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? Shouldn't we do an abdominal ultrasound?
Yes, madam. Abdominal ultrasound also must be done.
Okay, madam. Since uterus is not enlarged, we can start with vaginal ultrasound.
No, you may miss certain things, ovarian tumors and all.
With abdominal ultrasound, but
Yeah.
if the structure is pelvic organ, we can start with vaginal ultrasound. Yes, what will you see in vaginal ultrasound?
We'll see the endometrial thickness, whether the endometrium is regular or not, any intracavitary lesions, any polyps, any pyometra, any fluid collections. Then we have to see the cervix, then any adnexal growth. Then we can see look for any ascites, any other organomegalis during the transabdominal ultrasound.
Those are for by abdominal ultrasound. Any other organomegaly, you have to see by abdominal ultrasound. We are asking about TVS, no?
That's our endometrial thickness, regularity, invasion, any focal lesions, myometrial lesions.
Cancer, 10% ovarian cancer also can produce postmenopausal bleeding. So you should keep that also in mind when you do vaginal ultrasound. You must look for adnexa also. And you should also look for any mass in the uterus, I mean myometrium also. Okay?
Yes.
Endomyometrium and all that, not just endometrial thickness. So what is the cutoff for endometrial thickness for sampling?
4 millimeter is the cutoff for a postmenopausal women.
We used to follow 5 millimeters.
Yeah, but now
5 millimeters. You may miss about 2% of cases if you follow 5 millimeters. But you will do less number of endometrial samplings. If you take 4 millimeters cutoff, 96% you may be able to diagnose. Still, you will miss 4%. If you put cutoff 3%, 3 millimeters, you may be able to add 1 or 2 more percentages, okay, of detection. But you have to do lots of patient sampling. You have to balance between the two. Okay, that's why usually the now currently accepted is 4 millimeters and above. We have to do sampling to start with. But suppose you have not done sampling and patient is having persistent bleeding, as has been told, against the background of atrophic endometrium, type 2 cancers can occur.
Yes.
So you have to rule out. You have to do in a subsequent sitting, even when the endometrium is less than 4 millimeters, you may have to do endometrial sampling. Or if you already done endometrial sampling and the patient is persistently bleeding, you have to go for another modality like hysteroscopy when there is suspicion. Okay, that's how you should answer in the examination. They'll ask you what is the role of endometrial thickness. In that you have to answer like this. Viva question, I am telling. Okay. Next. How do you do endometrial
Sampling?
sampling?
Which method will you use?
We can use Pipelle, fractional curettage, then endometrial aspirator.
Oh no, in this patient, which will you prefer?
Pipelle aspiration.
In this patient, we have done a Pipelle aspiration.
People.
Yes, sir.
What is the advantage of people over fractional curettage?
Pipelle is an office procedure. We can the sensitivity and specificity is similar to fractional curettage.
Maybe more also. Okay. So it is a procedure, no anesthesia is needed. Patient with all these complications, hypertension, diabetes, if she has to be given anesthesia, by the time you prepare for this minor procedure itself, it may take time, isn't it? In the same sitting where you are examining the patient in the OPD, same day probably you will be able to do people sampling. If you don't have people, you can use a fine Karman's cannula. Karman's cannula you have seen for MTP. Similar way, 4 millimeter one or even thinner one, you can use and aspirate. you can do it. That may do the purpose. Okay. See, most of these patients will have stenotic cervix, postmenopausal women, especially when there is prolonged menopause. They may have stenotic cervix. Even under anesthesia, it may be difficult to dilate the cervix. You cause a lot of trauma to the cervix and bleeding and all that. Where people will be useful in that way. Easily it may go, okay, without much difficulty. It is so thin, with least discomfort. Okay, what report you expect? Already somebody has told, no? When will you do
So
hysteroscopy?
did you get the report? Have you done and did you get the report?
Yes, we get the report, but it's not, one side can be shared, madam.
Okay,
It's not
you
moving.
tell us, that is enough.
Okay, very good. Sir, our people, on a people aspiration, we had got an endometrial adenocarcinoma, well differentiated with focal papillary areas and squamous metaplasia.
Endometrioid adeno.
No, you tell me, in endometrial cancer, what all histopathology are possible?
It can be, the most common is usually seen is adenocarcinoma, and rare variants are clear cell carcinoma, serous carcinoma, mucinous carcinoma, mixed and squamous cell carcinoma, undifferentiated carcinomas.
Give some gaps, take a breath in between when you answer. Okay, don't continue like that in one sentence, all the carcinomas. Okay, tell one by one. Suppose in 20 minutes clinical examination for you, 20 questions will be asked, let us say. If you answer this fast, you'll be asked 40 questions. You should know how to answer slowly, and examiner will have time to listen and understand what you answered. Otherwise, some things will be missed by the examiners and they'll keep on asking same thing, thinking that you are not told. Okay. So endometrioid adenocarcinoma is the commonest in 80% and above. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And papillary carcinoma, serous carcinoma occurs in about 10%, 5 to 10%. Clear cell carcinoma, 5%. Others are all very, very rare. Okay. So for all practical purposes, we get endometrioid carcinoma because 80% of our patients, 80 to 90% of our patients are type 1. Only 10 to 20 only are type 2 patients. And type 2 patients, as far as possible, a general gynecologist should not treat. Okay, unless they are really experienced. So general gynecologists can treat a low risk endometrioid well differentiated tumors. So the pathology report will be endometrioid carcinoma, then grading. What is the grading? Grading also they'll give.
What do you mean by grading?
Grade 1 means less than 5% of non-squamous.
Grading is based on what?
Well,
Grading is
grade 1 well differentiated.
well differentiated.
Moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated.
Okay. Glandular differentiation, isn't it? That is what.
That's
Grading
okay.
is based on the, okay. So that is the
So
grade 1.
Other than grading, what else they'll report?
They'll report the type, the grading, then
What else? ERPR receptor status.
yes, ERPR receptor status.
It will be useful, especially in advanced cases where you want to give hormone therapy or when there is recurrence, palliative therapy when you want to give. Okay?
Hormones.
Okay. Next.
So you have got the results. Any other? Okay. Grade 2 and grade 3. Did you say? Grade 2 and grade 3.
Grade 2, it's 6 to 50% of non-squamous or non-molar solid pattern. Grade 3, greater than 50% of non-squamous or non-molar solid pattern.
That is one important fact. The grading of the tumor is important in CA endometrium. Okay. You have done an ultrasound also. You have done. You have got a histopathology. You have got a pap smear. Did you do a pap smear? Yeah, that is also. So what is the pap smear report?
It's not very.
It is not.
It's not very.
Even then it is. It has to be done. Okay. Then what is the next step?
Maximum 50% of cases you will get malignant cells in endometrial.
Yeah.
But if you get even benign endometrial cells, you should suspect malignancy. Okay, that is important.
Then what is the next step?
MRI. for this patient.
MRI, okay. If you are resourceful, you can do MRI. In early stage,
Clinically, by clinical and USG, if it is confined to uterus, she doesn't have any high risk, we can go for surgical staging. Otherwise, we can go for MRI.
otherwise you can go for MRI.
Otherwise?
If she's a younger age and she's planning fertility preservation surgery, or we suspect a high-grade tumor, we suspect lymphovascular invasion, we can go for MRI.
Otherwise, you feel that you need not be doing MRI, is it? Only if, for this lady, should you go for an MRI or not? For this 60-year-old lady, will you do a MRI? What are the reasons?
She's obese.
Why do you want to do MRI?
She's 60-year-old. She's obese. She's hypertensive, diabetes. These are all high risk in this patient. So,
That are high risk factors for a occurrence of an endometrial carcinoma. But you want to do the extra information. You want to know the extent of the disease. You knew that she has got a carcinoma from your histopathology, but you want to know the extent of the disease also, isn't it? So MRI will be helpful. How?
MRI will assess the depth of the invasion of the myometrium in a cervical extension.
Slowly, as I said, slowly. One is the depth of the myometrial invasion.
Myometrial invasion. Any lymph node MRI is including involvement, lymph node involvement.
After the myometrium, you can go for the cervix, isn't it? If there is any cervical involvement.
Cervical stromal invasion.
Cervical stroma invasion, isn't it? So that changes the staging also, isn't it? Okay, one is
myometric invasion, cervical stroma invasion to assess the lymph node involvement and any adnexal involvement. Parametrial extension.
So in advanced stages, it is a must. If you are not going for surgery, it is a must. Suppose patient is unfit for surgery due to various anesthetic risk factors. If you are giving only radiotherapy, primary radiotherapy, then also it is a must. You will know the extent of the disease and plan the radiotherapy. And if you are going for fertility sparing surgery, it is all the more important. Why? When will you give fertility sparing?
If the depth of myometric invasion is more than 50% or any lymphovascular space involvement, the cervix is involved, we will not go for fertility sparing surgery to her.
What is the size of the growth it should be?
Less than 2 centimeters.
Preferably there should not be any myometrial invasion. Preferably there should not be any myometrial invasion. Well differentiated tumor. All these things you have to tell. And there is a strong desire for fertility. You must explain to the patient this is not the standard of care. Patient will only 60% may respond to your hormonal therapy. Very high recurrence rate, at least 25%. It may take up to 9 months for the
hormonal therapy
to become negative. 2 subsequent minimum biopsies should show that it is negative. You give very high dose of progestogens, that itself will cause a lot of side effects. How much is the dosage?
Megestrol acetate 160 mg daily for 3 months, or medroxyprogesterone acetate.
Medroxyprogesterone acetate 160. No.
Megestrol
acetate is 160. Medroxyprogesterone.
That is the best drug, no? Megestrol. Can you repeat the biopsy after 3 months or isn't it? Then go on repeat.
3 months you have to repeat. It may take time.
Okay. It may take time.
Again, 2 negative samples before you send her to an IVF specialist or wherever infertility specialist, so that she can become pregnant fast. After she finishes her pregnancy, call her back for surgery. Okay, all this has to be told. You may get a long question. Fertility sparing surgeries in gynae-oncology or gynecological cancer cases. You should start from cervix, pre-invasive, stage 1, B1, then you go to endometrium, like that. Each one you have to choose and write a few sentences. their radical trachelectomy and conization, all those things you have to write there. Here you have to write this hormonal therapy. In ovary, you may write only ovarian cystectomy or salping ovariotomy one side only. Okay, all those things you have to write. It is a long question. Okay, please remember. Okay.
Okay, continue. So you have done an MRI, then how will
We
you
have
decide
done
the
an
mode of treatment? Your
The
MRI
MRI
findings? Report is?
MRI
Stage.
uterus bulky, retroverted with a mild distension of the endometrial cavity, distortion of the endomyometrial junction zone at few places, involving less than 50% of myometrium, likely neoplastic etiology, no lymphadenopathy, no other organ involvement.
Okay.
What is likely to be your stage? Of course, it
Stage
is.
1A.
It is
Clinical or whatever.
ultimately
Depending
it is surgico-pathological staging, but
And then with
you
the MRI,
you want to refer the patient to an oncologist, or your gynecologist can do this case.
Stage 1A.
It is one
Stage.
Stage 1
stage 1B.
Is it one? Is it more than 50%? 50% never involved?
It is less than 50%, no?
Why you are saying B?
Less than 50%. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Then it is
1A.
1A. Okay.
1A.
And no lymph nodes. No. 1A doesn't need
The
lymphadenectomy.
endometrium stage 1A, grade 1.
No, that's why we are asking you whether you want to do send the patient to a oncologist or a general gynecologist. Or otherwise, what is the surgical treatment, isn't it? She has to be treated surgically.
No.
No.
No, madam, general gynecologist can do this surgery.
Do. See, all patients will have outcome better if an oncologist does the surgery. Agreed. But it is not feasible in our country. That many gynae oncologists are not there. Only 25 seats are there. Even after 10 years also will not have enough people. Okay. So these are the cases which can be tackled by general gynecologists. Okay. Tell me what surgery you will do. How will you do?
We'll do an extrafacial hysterectomy and a bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. And depending
Tell
on
us the mode of approach. How are you? How do you access the abdomen?
Madam, general anesthesia is preferred. We'll put a vertical incision.
Laparotomy, vertical incision. We'll do a laparotomy.
Emma, how will you decide anesthesia? That is somebody else's job. You can't say general anesthesia. Right.
And then peritoneal washings can be taken. It's controversial. It can be or can.
No, we are asking you what you will do. That is, isn't it? Whether peritoneal washing should be taken or should not be taken. And your reasons.
It does not have any implication in treatment, only for prognosis for future reference. You include it. Okay. So if ascites is there, you collect the fluid. That's what first thing you should tell. If it is not there, you may take peritoneal washings. Do a thorough inspection of all the pelvic and abdominal viscera for any metastasis, including palpating the retroperitoneal nodes. Though we know the involved nodes may not be palpable. That's why we don't do selective sampling. We don't do, because involved nodes may not be palpable. If you go for sampling, that means remove only enlarged nodes, you'll miss so many involved nodes, isn't it? Most of the nodes are microscopically involved, no? So you may miss. So you don't. If at all you do either lymphadenectomy or don't do lymphadenectomy. Okay. Next question is, what is extra? Facial hysterectomy.
Extrafacial.
You said extrafacial you will do, no?
Yes, sir.
Class 1 of bivalent and type 1 of Usually for PGs, we don't ask Kerlan-Morrow. If you are very good, then we may ask, but otherwise you don't ask. Because the only thing which is more important in that is the nerve sparing is included in that for our purpose. Okay, okay. We'll come to it later. What is extrafacial hysterectomy? That's what we ask you. How is different from a hysterectomy for fibroid uterus? We must know these simple things. Now we talk about what is that exenteration, this, that, we talk big things. Simple hysterectomy, extrafacial, you have to tell.
So hysterectomy with removal of the paracervical tissue.
That means parametrium you're removing. Modified radical. That is class 2. What we are talking is 1. Type 1. Some people say that you have to skeletonize the uterine vessels. Don't clamp very close to the uterus, on the uterus. When you put clamps near parametrium and all that, paracervix, mecandots and all that, we almost clamp the cervix, isn't it? Slip clamp on the side of the cervix. And when you cut, you may cut part of the cervix. That means little bit of cervix may remain with the patient. That should not happen. You should not shave the cervix. Clearly, you have to remove the cervix. Okay? And in front, when you push the bladder, you should not push with the fascia. Vesicocervical fascia, tubovesicocervical fascia should remain with the specimen. It should come out with the specimen. It should not go with the bladder. That means you have to do a sharp dissection there. Okay? Skeletonize the uterine vessels, pushing the bladder. When you advance the bladder, you must should not include tubovesicocervical fascia and clamp a little away from the cervix. I won't say laterally, it should not cut the cervix at least. And uterosacral ligaments also should be cut. Some of the gynecologists do the hysterectomy in 3 steps, 3 clamps only they say. Cornal structures, uterine vessels, mecandots, finished. It should not be done like that. Uterosacrals need to be clamped separately so that we don't, you won't cut the cervix there. Okay? Can you repeat that? Extrafacial?
Skeletonize the uterine, in extrafacial hysterectomy, skeletonize the uterine vessels, and the clamping of the cervix should be just lateral to slightly lateral to the normal
Cervix.
Removed with the specimen. Some people even
The clamp should not be slipping onto the cervix, through the cervix. That is
the vesicocervical ligament, so that
anteriorly.
Anteriorly. Okay. Right. Go ahead. So you'll do extrafacial hysterectomy. Is there a role for conserving the ovaries?
There can be chances of micro deposits, metastasis to the ovaries. So there is no 60-year-old lady. There is no role in preserving ovaries here.
Suppose 45-year-old, will you conserve the ovaries?
It's better to do bilateral salpingoceptomy because of the chance of micrometastasis and any other chance of synchronous ovarian.
General rule in cancer is removal of ovaries. Okay, only 5% of the women are less than 40 years age. There only the doubt will come. Some people have retained the ovaries in low risk patients after inspecting the ovaries and all that, well differentiated tumors, and they didn't find any problem. Okay, but the thing is, endometrium is also adenocarcinoma. In ovary also we get adenocarcinoma. There is a risk of metastasis. People have found up to 10 to 12% metastasis in the ovary, micrometastasis. So that should be kept in mind. Whereas in cancer cervix, mostly it is squamous cell carcinoma, isn't it?
Yes.
And it doesn't usually spread to the ovary. That's why we can retain the ovary and fix them higher up somewhere, okay, above the brim. That's what can be done. And what is the place for laparoscopic surgery in endometrial cancer?
You see, endometrial adenoma stage 1A, grade 1, there is no need of any.
Your case. Don't.
Yeah.
In your
In
case,
this case, laparoscopic hysterectomy can be done.
yes. Some places they say it is gold standard for endometrial cancer, laparoscopic surgery. But in cancer cervix, recently, two publications especially have come out saying that the
Minimally invasive surgeries are
less if you do
not there.
laparoscopy, except very experienced persons who have been doing for many years and They know how to retrieve the sample in a bag and properly without spillage and all that. Better not to do. Beginners not to attempt radical hysterectomy for cancer cervix at the present time. In future, it may change. We don't know, because if you take proper precautions, even in cervix, it may be feasible. Right now, if they ask you in the examination, you tell cervix better to avoid laparoscopic surgery, endometrium preferred. The port site metastasis is point something, so need not worry. The oncological outcome is same, and the hospital stay, morbidity. All these patients are high risk, no? Obese, hypertensive, diabetic. So the incision will add to the infection. If you give a big incision, and for hours together if you do. Laparoscopy in that way, post-operative morbidity, pain, everything, ambulation, return to activity, thromboembolism, all these risks will be less. And robotic surgery is found non-inferior, at least as good as laparoscopy. Okay? But it is expensive. So wherever it is available, people will do. Okay. Okay, now next question comes whether you do lymphadenectomy or not, routinely for all patients, especially in your patient.
Not routine. We will not do routine lymphadenectomy for.
What is the evidence or proof for that? Any studies? Aztec study, a study of treatment of endometrial cancer, Aztec. Then PORTEC 1 study, post-operative radiotherapy in endometrial cancer. That also will come afterwards. Okay. Aztec study has shown, PORTEC study has shown that there is no need for adjuvant therapy in all these cases. Okay. And the lymph node metastasis, when the growth is confined to endometrium and well-differentiated tumor, very, very less. Lymph node metastasis will be 1 to 5%, maybe 1 to 2%. So there is no need to do lymphadenectomy. Okay. Regarding adjuvant therapy, these are the studies. Aztec study and PORTEC study. PORTEC studies has been followed up for 15 years. Still they find that those who did not undergo lymphadenectomy are doing better than, those who did not undergo post-operative radiotherapy are doing better than those who underwent post-operative radiotherapy. What are the problems of lymphadenectomy for a general gynecologist?
During lymphadenectomy, there can be blood vessel damage, nerve damage, there can be lymphedema.
Lymphocyst formation, debilitating conditions, more morbidity, intraoperative morbidity. For an oncologist, it may be just another half an hour. It doesn't matter, but for a general gynecologist, it may not be that easy. Plus, for patient, it is a risk of hemorrhage and lymphocyst formation and lymphedema, which are debilitating. Long-term effects are there. That's what people try to avoid. Okay. And post-op radiotherapy, again, long-term complications are high without much benefit. Local recurrence is less, but overall survival is same. It may not occur if you give radiotherapy, it may not recur locally, but distant metastasis will occur anyway, and patient will die. So overall survival will be same. That's why PORTEC 1 study has shown like that. PORTEC 2 study has shown in these cases, high intermediate risk cases, already has been told, no? Dr. Giri has told you what is high intermediate risk. In these cases, giving probably brachytherapy is good enough. It carries least morbidity. If you give external beam radiotherapy, it involves all the organs, especially intestines and other things, and morbidity is higher. So brachytherapy is better than giving EBRT and brachy. Okay. PORTEC, that is 2.
3 years comes. PORTEC 3.
PORTEC 3 is what?
PORTEC 3 is what?
Whole abdomen radiation and
it is a combination of chemo, radiation.
Okay, you can go for
only 8 stages, but it has not done.
Radiation, even if you shield the kidneys and all intestines or extended field irradiation, if you do para-aortic nodes, intestines will be radiated, leading to long-term complications like fistula and stricture of the intestines. Long-term complications are much more. Okay.
Much more. So what is the definite advantage if you do a systematic lymph node removal, lymphadenectomy in early stages?
We can plan our plan of management will be changed depending upon the lymph node positive. Whether
we have removed all the lymph nodes. We have removed all the lymph nodes. The result comes as
staging.
stage 1. No lymph nodes were not involved. None of the lymph nodes were involved, or at least one lymph node was involved.
Post-op-adjuvant therapy will differ. Post-op-adjuvant therapy will be different according to lymph nodes positive or negative.
Number one, you can stage the disease properly. Suppose paralytic node is positive. From stage 1, it will change to stage 3, 3C, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Number 1. So accordingly, prognosis you have to tell the patient. When it is stage 3, the prognosis is different. And you have to tailor your adjuvant therapy accordingly. That also you have to tell. Okay? Okay.
Then,
Is it time?
no, sir, 10 minutes more. 10 minutes we can have.
Okay. Please ask, madam. What else you want to ask?
So what are the prognostic factors? Suppose you are doing a surgery. What are the, your patient is asking you, what is my chance of 5-year survival? All those things you have to be including in the counseling, isn't it? So what are the prognostic factors?
Prognostic factors depends upon the histological grade, the depth of the myometrial invasion, lymphovascular invasion, the extent of spread, cervical spread, any adnexal spread, and based on the molecular genetics, we can
PR status, DNA ploidy, then
Ploidy and all we are not routinely doing, isn't it? Genetic studies are not being routinely done, isn't it? Isn't it? Suppose one lady has got she didn't do the doctor didn't do an endometrial study. Without that, the hysterectomy is done, and the result comes as endometrial stage 1 carcinoma. So what is the next step? Somehow, as pointed out in the first talk, isn't it? There are some errors. We can have some errors, isn't it? So somehow the hysterectomy was done without doing a endometrial sampling or a curettage. So we didn't have a report. But after the surgery, is it possible that even in endometrial hyperplasia, that it's after the surgery, after looking at the specimen, you get an endometrial carcinoma? What is that called?
Yes, ma'am, possible.
Possible. What is the percentage and what will you do in such situations? Or suppose you don't have an endometrial study and then you come, patient has come to you with the report with only hysterectomy.
After the report, we can, after 4 weeks, we can wait and then we can take a CECT and look for any enlarged lymph nodes.
Why do you want to wait 4 weeks? What is the importance of waiting for 4 weeks, sir, after one surgery? Waiting for 4 weeks and then taking a CT to know the nodal status, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
So restaging, because she had undergone a major surgery. Surgery itself can cause inflammation, enlargement of lymph nodes. So
Even prognostic factors, you didn't tell it.
Sir, I think about
I think there is some problem with the
Problem with this
vestibular
slit.
cells.
now, what is the location of the tumor? Is it? Did they miss out that?
Madam?
Didn't understand location.
No, yeah. The prognostic factors, you didn't say one point. That was what I was telling. Isn't it? After the surgery, will you cut open the specimen and see?
Yes, madam. We'll cut
Why do you
open
cut open the specimen?
to look for any myometrial invasion. If so, if more than 50%.
And again, you are missing out on the, see, not only the myometry, you look at the cervical stroma also, isn't it? Whether there is any cervical involvement. So that again, the stage changes, isn't it? Isn't it? Staging changes, isn't it? What is, if it is spread to the cervix, what is the surgery?
Stage
Maybe you have to go for a radical is written, you have to go for it, isn't it? So, and you have to, when it is a bulky, as previously said, when it is a bulky cervix, we have to clamp laterally. You cannot, the principle is that we cannot cut through the specimen. The oncology principle is that we cannot cut through the specimen, isn't it? So we have to go laterally. We have to go laterally, and as we said earlier, we have to go laterally so that the whole entire tissue is removed. That is the main principle, isn't it? And again, I'm asking you about brachytherapy. Brachytherapy for vaginal vault. What is the most common site of recurrence?
Vaginal recurrence.
What is the percentage?
15%.
How do you prevent that? Which treatment will prevent the vaginal recurrence? Or we were talking about the external EBRT, isn't it? We were talking about the EBRT, so vaginal brachytherapy. Can you tell something about the vaginal brachytherapy?
Vaginal brachytherapy prevents the vault recurrences from 15% to 1 to 2%. It can be done in LDR and HDR. The maximum 45 days is used. It is
Cesium or iridium is used for brachytherapy. Then
it can be do in 2 settings. Either it can be 9.1 gray in 2 days or 7 days in 3 days.
Okay. You said you will do a CT if incompletely staged. In cases where we have incompletely staged, you will do a CT to assess the nodal status, isn't it? Assess the nodal, and then will you advise a completion surgery, or will you go for an EBRT? Or
if enlarged lymph nodes are there, we'll or any other involvement, extrauterine involvement is present, we'll advise restaging. Otherwise, if the nodes are negative, we'll follow up the patient.
We will follow up the patient. No, I think there is some of this thing, isn't it? We have to do the completion surgery in the early cases, so that survival is better, isn't it? In the early cases, survival is better with a good surgery, isn't it? Surgery has got, what are the advantages of surgery, or what are the advantages of a laparoscopy as such? In obese patients, which will you prefer, laparoscopy or laparotomy? In obese patients, which do you prefer? Laparoscopy. Why? As it was discussed earlier, no?
There will be less wound infection.
Less wound infection.
Wound healing will be not much issue here. It will create much problem in case of laparoscopic surgeries. There will be less chance of bleeding in case of laparoscopic.
And what is one of the most severe complication after surgery in an obese patient with a big incision on the abdomen?
Thromboembolism.
Thromboembolism. So what is the main advantage over laparoscopy in that?
Early ambulation is possible in laparoscopic surgery.
I think sir has written, isn't it?
Suppose a 45-year-old patient had endometrial cancer, underwent surgical staging post-operatively. Can you start HRT?
If patient has major climacteric symptoms, we can give HRT.
Immediately. Usually we have for 1 year or 2 years. The recurrence rate is very high in the first 2 years. At least for 1 year or so, you should avoid giving. If there is vaginal dryness or something, vaginal symptoms locally, you can use something. But the regular menopausal hormone therapy should be avoided because these are estrogen dependent tumors, no? Okay. First 1 or 2 years, definitely. After that, you can give. So prognostic factors you told, no? You start in order, starting with the age, stage of the disease. Okay, stage of the disease, and in stage 1 alone, myometrial invasion, lymphovascular, deep myometrial invasion, lymphovascular space invasion, and histopathology, estrogen progesterone receptor status, like that. Each one you have to, in order you have to go. Okay, not haphazardly. Don't start with histopathology first. Okay. Each one you can give example.
And
This-
then when you talk about the surgery also, you said I'll go for a laparotomy and all. Don't straight away say that I'll go a TH with a BSO and all, isn't it? The mode of approach is very, very important, especially in CA endometrium, because most of us are going for a laparoscopy nowadays, isn't it? So we have to be very, very specifically how to approach the disease. That is what, isn't it? And in obese patients, definitely you are likely to have difficulty in access of the para-aortic nodes, that is during laparoscopy and all.
What
It
is
has
the
got its own-
role of vaginal hysterectomy
what is the place of vaginal hysterectomy?
in endometrial
obese-
cancer?
In endometrial cancer, what is the role of vaginal hysterectomy? Is it advisable?
If we are not planning for lymph node dissection, we can go for vaginal hysterectomy also.
Is it routine? In exceptional cases, where due to some reason you are not able to do abdominal hysterectomy,
By positioning or it's not?
your assessment is best when you do laparotomy, isn't it? Direct
Yeah.
visualization, palpation, everything. And MRI is not 100% sensitive. Don't depend so much. But you have to do MRI when you are planning to do vaginal. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And when you think it is a low risk endometrioid type stage 1A by your ultrasound or MRI and all that, then you can, because of constraint, you can do vaginal hysterectomy with bilateral salping oophorectomy. Because reaching the tubes and all that not easy sometimes vaginally. In postmenopausal women, the infundopelvic ligament, I mean, the ligaments will get thinned out and stretched. It will be very maybe difficult to reach the lateral to the ovary. Okay, so experienced vaginal surgeon only should do. Okay.
I think our time is up, sir. Any concluding remarks?
Screening for endometrial cancer. Is there any screening?
Only in high risk patients, we need to do screening. Otherwise, routine screening is not necessary.
How do you
Who are those high risk patients?
Any family history of HNPCC, Lynch syndrome patients, we can go for
Yeah.
screening.
Especially PCOS patients who have delayed menopause. Okay. Obese
So
patients.
we can wind up, sir, in 1 or 2 minutes.
Estrogen therapy. Okay. Tamoxifen takers, will you do routinely endometrial sampling?
No, sir.
Only if they have any bleeding. If they have bleeding.
Sir,
Okay.
bleeding.
There will be endometrial hyperplasia in all tamoxifen patients, depending on the dose and number of years. But if they are present with bleeding, definitely you have to do. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Kunju
Thank you.
Mohitin, Kunju
Thank you,
Mohitin,
sir.
Madam, Mini
Thank
Madam,
you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Bhagyalakshmi and her team. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, Habibullah sir and Mini madam. Both of you have been real teachers, real examiners, have patiently have been strict and patiently listening and teaching at the same time. Also congratulating Anisha, Dr. Anisha and Dr. Delna for taking
They
up
have
the
presented
challenge.
well, Sati.
Very well.
Ah,
Yes.
Yeah,
If you
for-
do like this and with stable mind, slowly you'll pass the exam easily.
Actually, that tips usually the students answer at a stretch. Actually, with the diary of words. Actually, when they know the answer, and the examiner won't get time. That is an excellent tip, sir. Then they have taken up the challenge, this Anisha and Delna, for sitting this exam.
Thank you very much. I can see coffee flask behind you, Dr. Sati. Break for coffee. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Kunju Mohitin, any plan to give coffee?
Mohitin, you should give at least virtual coffee, no?
Virtual coffee.
You at least project on screen.
Yeah.
No, I am expecting a dinner. Isn't it?
We
Kunju
all
Mohitin,
have
sir.
to handle Manna then.
Sugi.
Kunju
Sugi.
Mohitin.
Yeah, we'll do a hybrid dinner.
Virtual dinner.
Virtual dinner. Okay. Shall we move on to the next session? Next session is Viva on CA endometrium, CA ovary and vulva. Let me just